I never thought I'd be the guy who'd find sand in his wife's shoes during a winter workday. But then again, I also never thought I'd be the guy whose life unraveled because of an affair. My name is Jack, and I used to think I had a pretty normal life. I'm in my late 30s, with a steady job at a marketing firm, and I've been married to my wife, Corinne, for over a decade. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always believed we had a solid foundation. I could write a list of signs that all pointed to trouble, but I brushed them off like crumbs on the kitchen counter. Corinne was always a little prickly, sharp-tongued and quick to roll her eyes. I thought that was just her personality. She was an ambitious woman, always pushing for more in her career. It was one of the things I admired about her, to be honest. But lately she'd been coming home later than usual. Her excuses felt rehearsed, and there was a new edge to her voice that I couldn't quite pinpoint. One day, it was a Tuesday. I remember because we had a work event scheduled for the weekend and I was looking forward to it. She told me she'd be working late that day, which wasn't unusual. I decided to take a break from my routine and swing by her office, maybe surprise her with dinner. I pulled into the parking lot after 5, still feeling like a doting husband. But as I walked up to the entrance, I noticed her car wasn't there. Confused, I checked my watch. It was still early, and she had said she'd be there for a while. I called her cell, but it went straight to voicemail. My gut twisted. Something was off. Instead of waiting around, I decided to drive home. On my way, I thought of all the places she could be. Maybe she stopped to grab a drink with her coworkers. It sounded innocent enough, but the seed of doubt began to sprout. When I got home, the house was quiet. I expected her to be there, but she was. I turned on the TV, trying to shake the unease that had settled in my stomach. An hour passed, and then two. I half-heartedly scrolled through my phone, but all the while I was glancing at the front door. When she finally walked in, I felt a rush of relief mixed with frustration. "Hey, you," she said, her voice light as if she hadn't just vanished for the evening. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, but I could hear the crack in my voice. "Oh, just had to finish a few things at work. Got caught up in a meeting," she replied, waving her hand dismissively. "Really?" I raised my eyebrows. "You didn't call?" She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "I was busy, you know how it is." That was a lie, and I felt it like a slap across my face, but I didn't push it right then. I didn't want to raise any alarms. Instead, I let it simmer, thinking there'd be a chance to dig deeper later. But the truth is, I didn't need a lot of digging. My instincts were screaming at me. The next morning, I found my opportunity when I noticed a small grain of sand on the living room carpet. I brushed it aside, thinking it was odd. Winter was deep in our bones, and the last time I checked, nobody was visiting the beach. I looked around, and to my surprise, I found more grains of sand in her shoes by the door. "Corinne," I called out, my heart pounding. "Did you go to the beach?" "What? No, why would I do that?" She answered from the bathroom, her tone defensive. I wanted to say something, to confront her then and there, but I let it go. Instead, I started piecing the puzzle together in my head. I began to wonder if the sand was the tip of the iceberg. If I thought back over the past few months, there were little things. Her phone buzzing late at night, the way she'd suddenly become secretive about her texts. I had to confront her, but first, I needed more proof. The sand was just the beginning, and I had to find out what lay buried beneath the surface. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played. I felt like I was living in some twisted reality show where the plot took a dark turn. The sand in Corinne's shoes was an unsettling reminder of the secrets she was keeping. It nagged at me like a stubborn itch. I couldn't let it fester without finding out more. I decided to do some sleuthing of my own. I became the husband who was always glued to his phone, not out of obsession, but necessity. I started by following her more closely. I wanted to see if there were any patterns in her behavior that might confirm my suspicions. One Friday evening, I noticed she was getting ready for a dinner with colleagues. The way she dressed made my stomach twist. She wore that red dress, the one I loved, but she claimed it was too tight for work. My heart sank. I knew it was a date night outfit. "Are you sure you want to go out tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course, Jack. I told you it's a team dinner. We're trying to bond before the project launch." Her voice dripped with annoyance, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Right. I said, my voice flat. Have fun. As soon as she left, I had a decision to make. I grabbed my keys, heart pounding in my chest. If she was lying, I needed to find out where she was really going. I drove around, trying not to think too hard about what I might discover. But the thought of her laughing with someone else, enjoying a night I should have been part of, fueled my determination. After an hour of circling the area, I finally spotted her car parked outside a trendy restaurant on the other side of town. My gut twisted into knots. I parked a little ways down the street and waited. The minutes dragged on like hours. I felt like a private investigator in a cheap movie, but I had to know. Eventually, I saw her walk out, but she wasn't alone. My heart dropped into my stomach as I recognized the figure beside her, Tom, one of her coworkers. I'd met him a few times at office parties. He always seemed a little too friendly with Corinne, but I dismissed it back then. Now I was watching as they stood close, laughing, their body language too intimate for my comfort. I watched as they leaned in to share a joke, and then, without warning, they kissed. Just a quick peck, but it was enough to make my blood boil. The betrayal hung heavy in the air around me like a fog. I felt sick, a mix of anger and despair swirling in my chest. They walked into the restaurant together, and I had a front row seat to the destruction of my marriage. I drove home, my mind racing with a cocktail of emotions. I was furious, heartbroken, and embarrassed. I thought about all the moments I had cherished, the dreams I had for our future, and how quickly everything was falling apart. I wanted to scream, to smash something, but instead I stewed in my own thoughts. When Corinne returned home later that night, I was waiting for her in the living room with a glass of whiskey in hand. She walked in, surprised to see me sitting there, and her smile faded as she noticed the tense atmosphere. "Hey, you're still up?" she asked, trying to mask her surprise. "Yeah, I didn't sleep well. I saw something today," I said, my voice low and steady, the whiskey burning in my throat but giving me courage. "I saw you with Tom." Her face went pale, and I could see the cogs turning in her mind, searching for an excuse. "What do you mean? We were just working late," she stammered. "Working late?" I leaned forward, my heart racing as I set the glass down. "It looked more like a date to me. You kissed him, Corinne, don't lie to me." The silence stretched between us, a chasm of betrayal and anger. "Jack, you don't understand," she started, but I cut her off. "No, you don't get to make excuses. You've been lying to me. How long has this been going on?" Her eyes darted away, and I could see her scrambling for words. "It's not what you think, I swear." But I didn't want to hear her half-hearted explanations. I was done with the lies. I had seen the evidence, and it burned like acid in my gut. The woman I had trusted had shattered that trust into a million pieces, and I was left standing in the wreckage of our marriage. As I confronted her, the emotional impact crashed over me like a tidal wave. I had never felt so powerless and so betrayed. I wished I could take it all back, wish I could. Go back to the days before the sand and the lies, before the laughter faded from our lives. But as the truth hung in the air, I knew I had to make a decision. I needed a plan to move forward. The question was how. In the aftermath of that confrontation, the atmosphere in our home felt suffocating. It was as if every breath I took was laced with the bitter taste of betrayal. Corinne tried to explain, but I had already switched off. I didn't want to hear her justifications or her "I'm sorry"s. The air was thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings, and I needed space to process what had just happened. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, replaying every moment in my mind, from our first date to the life we had built together. I felt like a ghost haunting my own memories. I loved her, but the love I had felt was now intermingled with a profound sense of loss. The trust that had taken years to build had crumbled in a matter of moments, leaving me with nothing but questions. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Corinne again just yet. Instead, I needed to get my ducks in a row. I started doing research online about infidelity, relationships, and what steps to take next. It was surreal digging into articles about cheating, but it felt necessary. I knew I had to be smart about this, and I needed a plan. I decided to track her movements for a week, not just out of suspicion, but to gather concrete evidence. I wasn't a detective, but I could certainly observe. I started taking note of her work hours, her social media patterns, and the moments she seemed most distracted. It turned into an obsessive routine, but it helped me regain a semblance of control. During that week, I also reached out to friends. I didn't share all the details, but I hinted at problems in our marriage. Their support felt comforting. They listened and offered advice, sharing their experiences. A couple of them had gone through similar situations, and their stories gave me insight into the emotional turmoil that lay ahead. I realized that I wasn't alone in this. As I monitored Karen, it became clear that she was still seeing Tom. She'd go out with him during lunch breaks, and I noticed she'd come home with a different energy, a buzz that hadn't been there before. It was infuriating to see her so happy when I was drowning in heartbreak. One afternoon, I found a receipt in her purse for a restaurant she claimed she hated, dated the same day she had told me she was working late. The evidence was piling up, and it only solidified my resolve to confront her again. But this time, I would be ready. As the week dragged on, I started planning my revenge. It wasn't just about hurting her back. It was about regaining my dignity. I considered what would hurt her most, and the idea formed in my mind like an artist slowly revealing a masterpiece. I wanted her to feel the betrayal she had inflicted on me. The best way to do that was to make her realize that I was moving on, that the life she once held dear was slipping through her fingers. I began to take better care of myself. I hit the gym, started eating healthier. I wanted to show her that I could thrive without her. I began to socialize more, reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in ages. I even started flirting with a woman from my office, a cute graphic designer named Lisa who was always warm and friendly. It was liberating, and I felt a rush of confidence I hadn't felt in years. On a Friday night, after another week filled with her lies, I decided it was time to execute my plan. I invited a few friends over for drinks, making it clear it was a casual get-together. I wanted to create an environment where Karen would feel the full impact of her choices. I figured if she saw me happy and moving on, it might just make her realize what she was losing. As I set up the living room, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. I was in control now, but I had to keep my emotions in check. When Karen walked in that evening, she was clearly taken aback by the crowd. "What's all this?" she asked, a hint of irritation in her voice as she eyed the group. "Just a little get-together," I replied, forcing a friendly smile as I introduced her to the guests. I watched her face as she registered the laughter and the light atmosphere, and I could see the tension in her body. As the evening progressed, I made sure to engage with Lisa. We laughed, we reminisced about work projects, and I could feel Karen's eyes boring into my back. The jealousy radiated off her, and it felt good. I reveled in the attention, enjoying the contrast between my newfound freedom and her suffocating guilt. Karen tried to fit in, but I could tell she was struggling. Her laughter was forced, and she kept glancing at me with an edge of desperation. It was a powerful feeling, the realization that I was reclaiming my life while she was drowning in her mistakes. After a few hours, I noticed Karen slipping away from the group, her mood visibly darkening. As I caught her eye, I raised my glass in toast to my friends, a silent acknowledgement of my victory. She stood there for a moment before storming out of the room, and in that moment I knew I had made the right decision. I wasn't just moving on, I was taking back what was mine. In the following days, Karen confronted me again, but this time I was prepared. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "Because I've seen what you've done, and I refuse to be the one who gets hurt without a fight," I replied, my voice steady. Her reaction was a mix of rage and confusion, but I saw the realization sink in. I was no longer the man she could manipulate. I was done being her emotional punching bag. In that confrontation, I felt the last remnants of my heartbreak beginning to lift. Slowly but surely, I was transforming the pain into empowerment. I knew I was on the right path. I was ready to face the aftermath, whatever it might be. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I would emerge stronger one way or another. As the days turned into weeks, I could feel the shifts evolving in our household. Karen, once full of sass and defiance, now walked around like a shadow of her former self. The confidence I had built up through my plan for revenge made me feel powerful, but the reality of our situation weighed heavily on my heart. I didn't want to see her like this, but I also wouldn't back down. I had to keep reminding myself that she had made the choices that brought us to this point. The truth is, I was still battling with a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, I was proud of myself for taking control and moving towards healing. On the other hand, there were moments when I caught myself feeling guilty for the way I was treating her. I thought back to the vows we had made, the promises of love and support, and wondered if I was veering too far from that path. But then I'd remind myself that she had shattered that commitment long before I had a chance to react. One evening, after another long day at work, I returned home to find Corinne sitting at the kitchen table. The space was filled with an eerie silence. The usual clatter of pots and pans was absent, and the atmosphere felt heavy. She looked up as I entered, her face pale and drawn. I could see the shadows under her eyes. She was clearly struggling. "Jack," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed, waiting for her to continue. The tension in the room was palpable. "I know I messed up, I know I hurt you," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "I've been trying to figure out what I want, but I've realized I don't want to lose you. I was stupid and I let temptation take over. I need you to believe me when I say I want to fix this." I felt a rush of anger and I fought hard against it. "Fix what, Corinne? You've been with Tom, you broke our trust. You can't just take those words and expect everything to go back to normal." "I know," she pleaded, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. I love you, Jack. I've always loved you. I just lost my way for a while." Her words felt like daggers. I wanted to believe her. Part of me longed to return to the life we had built. But the reality was different. I couldn't erase the betrayal, nor could I forget the image of her kissing Tom. "Love isn't just words," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's actions. You've shown me how easily you can throw that love away. How can I trust you again?" Corinne put her head in her hands, and I could see the weight of her choices crashing down on her. I almost felt sorry for her, but I quickly pushed that feeling aside. This was not the time for sympathy. "I want to go to couples therapy," she said finally, lifting her head to meet my gaze. "I'll do anything you want. I'll make this right. Just give me a chance." I considered her offer. Therapy could be our only shot at salvaging our marriage, but I was hesitant. I had heard stories from friends about how therapy helped some couples, but I'd also seen many fail. Even if we went, would I ever fully trust her again? Would I be able to forgive her? "Let me think about it," I replied, and with that, I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her behind with her regrets. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty. I found myself weighing the pros and cons of going to therapy against the backdrop of my growing independence. I was learning to enjoy life again, reconnecting with friends and rediscovering passions I had neglected. I was even dating Lisa more seriously. She was kind, understanding, and showed genuine interest in my life. Everything I felt was missing with Corinne. But even as I explored this new relationship, the thought of therapy lingered in the back of my mind. I couldn't deny that there was a part of me still attached to Corinne. We had built a decade of memories together, both good and bad, and perhaps deep down, I wanted to believe that we could rebuild. I finally decided to give the therapy idea a shot, not for Corinne, but for myself. I needed clarity. If I didn't give it a chance, I might always wonder what could have been. So I agreed to attend couples therapy, with the understanding that I was not doing it for her sake alone. When we arrived at the therapist's office, I was tense. The waiting room was filled with a sense of unease, and for a moment I wished I could turn back and leave. But this was my path now, and I had to see it through. The therapist, a warm woman named Dr. Simmons, greeted us with a kind smile. She had a way of making the space feel safe, and I appreciated that. As we sat down, I could feel the air around us crackle with tension. Dr. Simmons began by asking us about our relationship, and I was surprised at how quickly Corinne began to open up. She spoke about her insecurities, the pressure she felt at work, and how she sought validation from Tom. I listened, trying to keep my emotions in check, but part of me wanted to scream. "You didn't just seek validation, you shattered our vows," I wanted to say, but I held back. This was not the time for accusations. After several sessions, I started to see some progress. Corinne was genuinely trying to understand her actions, and for the first time I could see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with. But even with this progress, my heart was still guarded. I wanted to believe in her transformation, but doubt lingered like a storm cloud above us. As we delved deeper into our issues, I found myself grappling with my feelings toward both Corinne and Lisa. I enjoyed Lisa's company and how she made me feel alive, but part of me was still emotionally tied to my past with Corinne. I was in a tug-of-war between moving forward and holding on. By the end of the month, I knew I had to make a choice, either commit to rebuilding my relationship with Corinne or explore this new chapter with Lisa. The decision weighed heavily on my heart, but I knew that I couldn't stay in limbo forever. It was time to confront my feelings and decide what I truly wanted moving forward. As I sat in the therapist's office during one of our sessions, I glanced over at Corinne. She looked different, more vulnerable perhaps. There was a flicker of the woman I had married, buried beneath the hurt and betrayal. But the question nagged at the back of my mind. Could I really trust her again? Dr. Simmons asked us about our individual feelings and how we viewed the future. I listened to Corinne share her hopes and dreams for the relationship, her deep commitment to change, and her desire to rebuild our life together. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the love we once shared could be rekindled. But every time I thought about taking that leap, I felt the familiar grip of doubt tightening around my heart. After the session, I drove home with a heavy mind. I replayed our conversation, dissecting every word, every emotion. I thought about the bond we had built over the years, the adventures we had shared, the laughter, the love. But that bond felt like a ghost now, haunting me with memories of a happier time. That evening, I decided to call Lisa. I hadn't seen her in a few days, and I needed to talk to someone who brought light into my life. She picked up immediately, her voice warm and inviting. "Hey Jack, how's it going?" she asked, her enthusiasm brightening my mood momentarily. "I've been better," I admitted. "It's been a tough week. Want to talk about it?" I hesitated, trying to gauge how much I wanted to reveal. "It's complicated. I'm in this thing with my wife, trying to figure out if we can salvage our marriage. But I'm also seeing you, and I'm torn." There was a silence on the other end, and I could hear the gears turning in her mind. "Jack, you deserve to be happy. You've been through so much. If this is about your wife's infidelity, you have to consider what's best for you." "I know," I said, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. "But I've shared so much history with Corinne. I want to explore the possibility of healing, but you're also feeling the spark with me." She finished for me, her voice gentle. "Exactly. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I also can't ignore how I feel. Just take your time." "You don't have to rush into anything," she replied. "Just remember that you have to put yourself first, Jack." Her words struck a chord. I realized I had been so focused on Corinne's emotions and our past that I had neglected my own needs. As the days passed, I found myself analyzing my feelings for both women, weighing them against the backdrop of my life. A few days later, during another therapy session, I finally decided to speak up about my feelings. Dr. Simmons had just asked us how we envisioned a healthy relationship moving forward. "Honestly, I'm struggling," I said, feeling the weight of the moment. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and while I see some potential for us to rebuild, I'm also seeing someone else. I don't want to hide that. I'm torn between the past and the possibility of a new future." Corinne's expression shifted from one of hope to shock, as if my words had literally knocked the wind out of her. "You're seeing someone. How long has this been going on?" "About a month," I confessed. "I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did. Lisa makes me feel alive again. She's kind, understanding, and she listens. Things have been so different since we started spending time together." "I can't believe this," Corinne said, her voice trembling. "You're moving on while I'm trying to fix things. How is that fair?" "It's not about fairness, Corinne," I replied firmly. "It's about what I need right now. I'm not saying I want to end things with you, but I can't ignore my feelings for Lisa either. I'm in a place where I'm rediscovering myself." Dr. Simmons interjected, trying to maintain order. "Jack, it's good that you're expressing your feelings. Corinne, it's understandable to feel hurt, but we need to focus on what this means for both of you moving forward." The tension in the room was palpable, and I could feel the emotional stakes rising. Corinne had tears in her eyes, but I could see that she was also angry. I don't want to lose you, Jack. I thought we were on the path to fixing things. You can't just throw it all away. I'm not throwing it all away, I said, my voice steady. I'm trying to figure out how to move forward in a way that honors all of us. I can't pretend everything is okay when it is. As the session continued, we delved deeper into our feelings, but I could feel the divide between us growing wider. I recognized that while Corinne was trying to change, I was already moving in a different direction. It became increasingly clear that I had a choice to make. After the session, I walked out feeling drained but also liberated. The truth was out, and there was no going back. I knew I had to confront both women, and I needed to be honest with them about where my heart truly lay. That evening I called Lisa and asked if we could meet. I wanted to talk about what we were doing and where we were headed. As I waited for her to arrive, my mind raced with thoughts of how I would handle the conversation. Part of me was terrified. What if she didn't want to continue? What if I lost her too? When Lisa arrived, her smile lit up the room, but I could see a flicker of concern in her eyes as she settled down beside me. "What's on your mind?" she asked, taking my hand gently. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world resting on my shoulders. "I need to be honest with you about my situation. Things with Corinne are complicated and I've been wrestling with my feelings, but I also don't want to hurt you or lead you on." Her expression turned serious and I could see the tension in her posture. "I appreciate your honesty, Jack. I've sensed there's been a lot going on with you. I want you to be happy. If that means working things out with Corinne, I'll support that. But—" I began, but she raised a hand. "No, but you need to figure out what's best for you. Just know that I want what's best for you, even if that means stepping aside," she said, her voice steady. I felt a rush of emotion. I didn't want to lose her, but I also knew I had to make a choice. "I want you to know that whatever happens, you've brought light back into my life. I can't forget that." "I won't forget it either, Jack," she said softly. That evening, I left our meeting with a sense of clarity that had been missing for weeks. I realized that while I was still grappling with my feelings for Corinne, I also had a chance to build something new with Lisa. Those two paths were diverging, and I knew I had to choose. As I prepared for my next therapy session with Corinne, I felt both anxious and ready. It was time to lay everything on the table. I would explain my feelings, my struggles, and ultimately, I would share my decision. I had come to understand that I couldn't be the one to shoulder the burden of our past alone. I needed to reclaim my happiness, and that meant being honest with both Corinne and myself. The moment of truth was fast approaching, and I was ready to face it head-on. The day of my next therapy session felt like an eternity as I paced the house, my mind racing with thoughts and the weight of my impending decision. I knew that this meeting would be pivotal, not just for Corinne but for me as well. I had spent weeks contemplating my feelings, navigating the emotional labyrinth of betrayal and desire. It was time to gather my courage and confront the reality of what I wanted. When we arrived at Dr. Simmons' office, the atmosphere was charged with tension. I could see Corinne fidgeting in her chair, her eyes darting around as if she were searching for a way to predict my words. As we settled in, I felt the familiar knot in my stomach tighten, but this time I was determined to speak my truth. Dr. Simmons opened the session by asking how we were feeling about our progress. I took a deep breath, feeling the eyes of both women, Corinne and the therapist, on me. It was now or never. "I need to say something important," I began, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "These past few weeks have been a whirlwind for me. I've tried to navigate my feelings and I've come to a realization. While I see that Corinne is working hard to rebuild our relationship, I've also been exploring a new connection with someone else, Lisa." The words hung in the air, thick with implications. I watched as Corinne's face shifted from anticipation to disbelief. "You're still seeing her? After everything we've talked about?" Her voice trembled and I could see the hurt wash over her. "Yes, I am," I replied, feeling a mix of guilt and resolve. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't deny what I feel. I've found joy and laughter with Lisa that has been absent in our relationship for a long time. It's not something I planned, but it happened." Dr. Simmons stepped in, her tone calm yet firm. "Jack, it's important to acknowledge your feelings. Corinne, how does this make you feel?" "I'm devastated," she admitted, her voice cracking. I thought we were working towards something. I've been trying to show you that I can change, that I want to be better. But now I feel like I'm losing you for someone else. Corinne, you need to understand that this isn't just about you, I said gently. It's about me too. I've been trying to hold on to something that feels broken, and despite your efforts, I don't know if we can go back to what we had. Dr. Simmons nodded thoughtfully. It's clear that both of you are at a crossroads. Jack, have you thought about what you want moving forward? I have, I said, feeling the gravity of the moment. I've come to realize that while I care about you, Corinne, our foundation has been shaken to its core. I don't believe we can rebuild it like it once was. I need to explore this new path with Lisa and see where it leads. Corinne's expression shifted from hurt to something more akin to anger. So, you're just going to walk away? After everything we've been through, you're giving up on us? It feels like you've already given up on us with your actions, I said, trying to remain calm. Despite the storm of emotions swirling in the room, you made choices that impacted our trust, and it's not something I can ignore. I need to prioritize my happiness. Silence enveloped the room as we all processed the weight of my words. I could feel Corinne's pain like a physical presence in the room, but I also felt a sense of liberation. I had finally taken control of my narrative. As the session continued, we navigated the turbulent waters of our emotions, but I felt a clarity that had been missing for so long. I had made my choice, and I was ready to face the consequences. After the session wrapped up, I walked out into the parking lot, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. I knew I was leaving behind a piece of my life, but I also felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had been honest with myself and with Corinne, and that was a step toward healing. In the days that followed, I began to embrace my new reality. I spent more time with Lisa, who was supportive and understanding as I navigated this transition. We explored new places, shared laughter, and built a connection that felt genuine and fulfilling. With her, I felt a spark that reminded me of what it was like to truly connect with someone. Corinne and I had a few more difficult conversations, but each one seemed to close a chapter rather than open a new wound. We talked about our memories, our regrets, and ultimately, the love that had once been. While it was painful to let go, I knew it was necessary for both of us to move forward. As I reflected on the past months, I realized that this experience had taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of putting myself first. Infidelity had ripped through our lives, but in the aftermath I found clarity. I learned that it was okay to prioritize my happiness, even if it meant hurting someone I once loved. In the end, I discovered that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning from the past and allowing it to shape a brighter future. I felt empowered to take control of my life and forge a new path, one where I could embrace the love I deserved. And as I stepped into this new chapter, I vowed to cherish the lessons learned and never lose sight of my own worth again.